Your heart longs for the past. Old traditions, lost eras, a time that feels simpler and more real. And this isn't just some vague feeling, we can see it everywhere. The rise of vintage aesthetics, movies about living in history, entire communities built around recreating the past. But it goes deeper than just entertainment. Studies show that Gen Z is experiencing something called historical nostalgia, a longing for times they've never lived in. We're more connected than ever, yet somehow we feel disconnected from something important. But what if that longing for history isn't just nostalgia? What if it's a signal that's pointing us to something that we've lost? This historical nostalgia is a big problem happening right now, and if we want to understand why we feel this way, then we need to break down this problem and figure out what to do about it. So that's what we're going to do today. So to really understand this feeling, this deep longing for the past, we need to break it down into 3 parts, and it all starts with the acceleration of modern life. But not our modern life. Let's take it back to the 18th century for a moment, where the Industrial Revolution was reshaping society. Machines took over handcrafted work, cities expanded, and mass production became the new norm. But not everyone welcomed this change. A group of writers, poets, and artists who would later cultivate the Romantic movement expressed that something had been left in the past. A world where human hands shaped creation, not efficiency. One of the loudest voices in this movement was a guy named John Ruskin. He saw industrialization as a force that stripped work of its meaning. He believed that the rise of factories wasn't just changing how things were made, but it was changing the very spirit of human creativity. As he put it, you must either make a tool of the creature or a man of him. You cannot make both. So in other words, when people are reduced down to a cog in a machine, something very essential is lost. Not very much so in the quality of their work, but in the depth of their lives. Ruskin's historical nostalgia wasn't about resisting progress, but it was about maintaining the values of craftsmanship in a world that seemed to be forgetting them. These ideas actually later inspired the arts and craft movement, which was dedicated to bringing back the artistry in an industrialized world. So if the Romantics were worried about losing craftsmanship to machines, just imagine how they would feel today. Except this time, it's not physical labor that's being automated. It's now mental labor. Today, AI isn't just changing how we work, but it's actively replacing us. In 2022, an AI-generated painting won an art competition. Like, actual human judges voted on the best piece of art in a competition, and the one they chose was one made by an AI robot. Like, that is actually mind-blowing. This actually sparked a ton of backlash from artists who believed that creativity itself was under threat. And this pattern keeps repeating. The more advanced our technology gets, the more we start to wonder about what we're leaving behind. You see countless examples of this happening in society. Vinyl records are outselling CDs, physical books are making a comeback against ebooks, and directors like Christopher Nolan refuse to rely on CGI because audiences crave and can feel the realness of practical effects. I want to make one thing very clear here though. This isn't humans rejecting progress, as a lot of people would take it to mean, but instead, this is humans finding a balance. Every time the world changes, we instinctively hold on to things that actually matter. The Romantics weren't wrong to fight for human craftsmanship, just like we're not wrong for seeking out work that actually feels meaningful. So it's very clear that this feeling that we get, this longing for the past, isn't new. This is a feeling that we've been having forever. It's very easy to say that this feeling is just humans not liking change, but I think it goes quite a bit deeper than that. And if we really want to understand this, then we need to understand the psychology behind nostalgia. So when we talk about nostalgia, there's a very specific type that stands out here. Historical nostalgia. Unlike just missing the good old days, historical nostalgia is a longing for entire eras, times that we've never even lived through. It's not really about wishing for a time that was simpler and better, but it's about a longing for a time where people actually lived by different values. Psychologically, this nostalgia is tied to how we process change. When rapid advancements like the rise of technology disrupt the rhythm of everyday lives, our brain automatically look for a sense of grounding, and this grounding is found in the past. This longing for historical periods that we've never lived through is sort of like a buffer for the anxiety that comes with an uncertain future. Take, for example, the interest of a pre-industrialized world. As we've become more connected digitally, there's been a renewed fascination with the idea of returning to simpler times. People romanticize the idea of working with their hands, living close to nature, and creating things with intention. And you see countless examples of this on YouTube as well. There's this push about disconnecting from technology and reconnecting with nature. And it's not just limited to physical work, but there's also been a rise in popularity for things like vinyls and handwritten letters. Even the entire niche of self-improvement incorporates things like journaling and meditation. These are not just hobbies, but they're a way for people to reclaim a sense of meaning in a world that just moves faster and faster every day. But what exactly is this feeling? What exactly is that longing for a time that we've never even lived through? Well, it turns out that nostalgia, and especially historical nostalgia, isn't just some random emotion, but it's an actual psychological response that serves a real purpose. At its core, nostalgia is an emotional experience that is rooted in our brain's chemistry. When we remember something from our past, whether it's a childhood memory, an old song, or an era we've never personally experienced, our brain releases a mix of dopamine and oxytocin. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter responsible for pleasure and reward, while oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, deepens our emotional connection to the memory. This chemical cocktail that goes on in our heads is what makes nostalgia feel real. Sometimes even more real than the present. But this isn't just about pleasure, it's also about survival. Evolutionary, nostalgia helps us maintain a sense of identity. It's a reminder of where we came from and reinforces cultural values that have been passed down for generations. When we feel uncertain about the future, nostalgia acts as a sort of anchor. It grounds us in something familiar. It's why in times of rapid change, like the rise of industrialization, the digital age, or the AI revolution, people instinctively look back to what felt like a more stable time. Our brains are trying to hold on to something that makes us feel secure. And this isn't just some abstract concept, but everyone experiences this. Think about the way people romanticize old school relationships, like in The Notebook, or why movies like Midnight in Paris resonate so deeply. It's that irresistible pull of a world that seems more stable and more passionate. It's why some people long for a time where people wrote letters instead of sending a text, or where communities felt tighter instead of further apart. This emotion isn't just nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia, but it's nostalgia for a way of life. And that's where the real power of historical nostalgia comes in. It's not about a longing for the past, but it's about what the past is trying to tell us. And that brings us to the real question that this video is trying to answer, which is, what exactly is the past trying to tell us? Let's go back to The Notebook, one of my favorite movies. Why does that story hit so hard? Well, it's not because it's a love story. We've seen plenty of those, and none of them really quite hit like The Notebook. But it's because The Notebook represents something that we long for. And that thing is a love that isn't fleeting, a love that isn't disposable, and a love that doesn't vanish the moment that things get difficult. A love that is chosen over and over again. That idea speaks to something deep inside of us. And in a world where relationships feel temporary, we see something in The Notebook that we want. Not just in the movie, but in our own lives. And that's why it sticks with us. It's not about the past was better, but it's about what the past is trying to tell us about what we're missing now. And if we zoom out, history shows us the exact same thing. Think about the olden days of Rome, where people would march off into the war under banners that they're willing to die for, a devotion for something greater than themselves. We don't romanticize the war itself, but we romanticize that feeling, that sense of purpose, the unwavering belief that your life is tied to something bigger. Today we live in a world where meaning feels hard to find. And that's why those stories, those certain moments in history pull at us. Not because we want to return to exactly to the way things were, but because those moments and those stories remind us of something that we've lost. And that is the real lesson of historical nostalgia. It's not a rejection of progress, it's a guide, a reminder of what actually makes life meaningful. And if you listen to it, if you listen very closely, you'll start to notice it in your own life. The conversations where you're actually present, the moments where you're not rushing, you're not scrolling, but actually truly living. The parts of history and culture that make you feel something real. That's what this feeling is trying to tell you. Not to go back, but to bring the best parts forward in innovation, in relationships, in everything, because the future is not just something that happens to us, it's something that we choose, and we get to decide which parts of it we want to bring into the future.